Hey guys, it's been a while. I'll be honest with you, I feel just a little bit weird sitting here after all this time. And I promise I won't dwell on it for too long, but I figured since this video is not country specific, it would probably be best for me to address right here. I tend to get really sappy, so I'm just gonna give it to you straight. I have missed just sitting here and getting the chance to talk to you, while learning something new, of course. And recently, my brain has given me some new ideas for us to explore, so let's see what the future holds. Anywho, it's great to see you again. This right here is my Instagram, so we could talk a little bit further, but let's get right into the video and let's learn about some of the differences between an American city and a European city. This should be interesting.
The United States and Europe both have large urban populations and deep cultural ties, but their respective cities have some distinct differences. For starters, there is a significant age gap between European and American cities. When Europeans first arrived in the Americas in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, there were as many as 10 million natives living in what is today the United States. But the natives were not concentrated in large urban settlements like the civilizations in what is today Mexico and Central and South America. If there had been, you can only speculate on what would have happened to them. There are some exceptions though. The oldest continuous settlements in the United States belong.
I love how you left that gray area.
Located in the southwest United States. These settlements were founded around 1100 AD, but they generally have never hosted more than a few thousand people. The largest known native settlement in the United States hosted as many as 18,000 natives. This city, called Cahokia, was located in what is today the state of Illinois, and just minutes from the modern-day city of St. Louis. But Cahokia was abandoned by the year 1350. The 10 largest cities in the United States, on average, were settled around the early to mid-18th century, while Europe's 10 largest cities are hundreds and sometimes thousands of years older.
That right there has to probably be one of the biggest differences that I could personally think of, and something that I always tell people whenever they come to the US. The United States compared to Europe is essentially just like a baby. It was just born like yesterday, if you want to think about it. Personally, I do appreciate new and updated and all of that. However, I think the inner nerd just kind of appreciates like the historical value that buildings and, like the historical events that have happened. I just kind of enjoy it and just kind of like reading upon it and getting to see it in person. Anyways.
Europe's 10 largest cities by population are on average larger than American cities when counting the residents within city limits. Out of Europe's 10 largest cities by population, none have less than 2 million people. But in the United States, 6 of its top 10 have less than 2 million people. European cities also have a higher population
That's food for
density.
thought.
Out of Europe's 10 most populated cities, only 3 have a density of less than 10,000 people per square mile. St. Petersburg, Russia, Kiev, Ukraine, and Rome, Italy. The city with the highest density is Paris, with 53,000 people per square mile, nearly twice as many people as the United States' densest city, New York, with 28,000 people per square mile. After New York City, it drops off pretty quickly. The second most populated city in the U.S., Los Angeles, has 8,500 people per square mile. Chicago, 12,000 people per square mile. Houston, 3,500 people per square mile. And Phoenix, 3,100 people per square mile. The differences in European and U.S.
I'm shocked how many people live in Phoenix.
Are largely due to American suburbs. People are living outside of city limits and in homes instead of multi-story structures. These suburbs initially came about because of the train. They then exploded with the wider use of the car and cheap fuel that powered them. Land outside of American cities was also cheap, making homes affordable for the middle class. Chicago is often credited with inventing the suburb. After the fire of 1874, the city banned the construction of wood buildings. So speculators built cheap wooden homes as fast as they could just outside of Chicago for the 100,000 people that were just left homeless. After World War II, the federal government started guaranteeing loans that required 20% or less for a down payment and loan lengths as long as 30 years. Before this, it was common to have to make a 50% down payment with loan lengths as short as 5 to 10 years.
However, I won't get into it, but the housing situation is pretty screwed here in the US. I know it varies from country to country, but I have been in the market for a house. It's a hot pickle right now. Just saying. I guess especially in my area here in the South Florida area, so go figure.
These new loans increased the amount of people that could purchase a home. But these loans had more favorable terms for new construction compared to existing housing since the government did not want to back a loan on a house that may have issues. This meant it was easier to get a new home in the suburbs than a property close to the city center, which was typically older. However, African Americans were often discriminated against when it came to these loans, so few were able to move to the suburbs. While mortgage discrimination has improved significantly, the discrimination that occurred from the 40s to the 60s contributed to generational poverty, and it has had a lasting impact on the geography of American cities. African Americans are still less likely to be living in the suburbs than whites, though the demographics are slowly changing.
It's kind of interesting that he touched upon this, and I know this is not a finance channel. However, if only you knew what I knew. Bank of America, one of our most common, most popular banks that we have here in the US, actually just recently put out something to help those that are of color. That includes my brown ass. What? Bank of America is actually trying to get both Hispanics and Black Americans to get pre-approved for housing, which I think is pretty nice. However, it kind of feels like a double-edged sword because, 2008, the housing crisis that we experienced here in the US. So, is it predatory? Maybe. Am I still going to try and find out some more information? Probably.
Today, more African Americans actually live in the suburbs at 39% than within city limits at 36%. The mass exodus in many of these cities, often referred to as white flight, led to severe urban decay. Residential buildings were abandoned, leading to local businesses shutting their doors due to less customers, which resulted in job losses, which led to poverty and crime, which led to more people leaving. This cycle continues in many cities today, while others have seen an urban revival in the last couple of decades, as many young professionals move back to the city. However, where wealthier people in the United States tend to live in the suburbs, in Europe, wealthier individuals are more likely to live in the city center. Take a look at this map of the London Underground, which shows the average income of the neighborhoods that use each stop. The highest incomes are at the center of the city, and the lowest incomes are at the farthest stops from the center. Speaking of public
I never quite noticed that.
Europe's public transportation systems are usually thought of as superior to the United States, with a few exceptions like New York City. Because of the suburbs, U.S. cities are too spread out, and buses and trains can't stop at every block to pick everyone up. If they did, it would run extremely slow.
Yes. Yes. When it comes to Europe, the idea of public transportation doesn't freak me out in the slightest. And using my phone here, of course, I'm able to get from point A to point B pretty efficiently, accurately, and surprisingly all in one piece.
When it comes to roads, both the United States and Europe have extensive major road networks. But in the United States, large roads often run right through its cities instead of up to it. While this may make sense in trying to quickly travel from state to state or city to city, it is often criticized for splitting neighborhoods and disrupting local communities. Another thing that separates European and U.S. cities are the amount of skyscrapers. United States cities generally have more skyscrapers. Out of 50 cities in the world with the most skyscrapers, only 2 are in Europe. Moscow, Russia, with 57 skyscrapers, and Frankfurt, Germany, tied for 50th with 17. The United States has 11 cities in the top 50, with the most going to New York City with 287 skyscrapers. When European cities do have skyscrapers,
that's a lot of skyscrapers.
Have a section designated for them, away from their historic city center, like La Défense, a business district which is actually a few miles outside of Paris itself. The skyscraper was first born in the United States in the late 19th century, the first in Chicago and later in New York City. The United States took pride in their large structures, seeing them as a symbol of their prosperity and power. Europe, on the other hand, already had established historic buildings and public spaces that left little room for large new structures. They were also resistant to what could be considered American. After the destruction of European cities in the Second World War, Europe had the chance to build whatever they wanted. They could redesign their cities around the car as American cities were starting to, and now had room to build skyscrapers. But Europe chose not to. Europe had an overwhelming desire to build their cities back to the way they were before the war and to preserve their unique cultures and way of life. The city of Brussels also played a role in the rest of Europe protecting its urban landscape. The city of Brussels had a laissez-faire approach to urban planning in the 1960s to the 1980s. Structures that were often generic and didn't fit in with Brussels' historic city landscape were put all over the city. The rest of Europe took notice and became concerned a similar randomness of structures could be placed all over their respective cities. Zoning laws that protected Europe's historic districts and structures were then passed across the continent.
And I think that's actually wonderful that they got passed on, because wouldn't it just be a shame if every single freaking city in the world was full of skyscrapers? But you definitely, most definitely need a car here in the US to like get anywhere. If you want to go get a coffee in Europe, anything is within walking distance, like 10 minutes, you'll be there. Here, not so much. I recently went to a trip out to DC and it was absolutely stunning. However, having to walk from the building that I was staying at over to where, like, you know, all like the monuments are, all the freedom monuments, Lincoln Memorials, all that in between, yeah. That was over an hour walk. Like, yes, I could have taken the bus. However, it was fall and I had never experienced fall, so I was going to enjoy every living second of it. But I actually think this video does an incredible job kind of differentiating the differences between American and European cities. So a huge shout out to the geeks over at Geography Geek. They did a phenomenal job on this video. It was phenomenal getting the chance to check this video out with you. It's been a hot minute. Don't forget to check out my Instagram, and here on the screen you should be seeing some videos of some of my weirder adventures that I did throughout that time that I wasn't creating reaction videos. Did you know I spent 24 hours on the streets of Miami? That was something else. Click the video, find out what happened. Well, I'm here, so more or less already know, but click anyways. Talk to you soon.